Hey guys, welcome to Talking Strongman. My guest today has done it all. A former pro strongman, a former pro wrestler, and now a pro bodybuilder, the one and only John Andersen. How's things, buddy?
I'm great, brother. I appreciate you having me on. We're going to have some fun talking shop and shooting the shit, huh?
Definitely, man. It's exciting to have you on. You're a man that has literally done it all.
Absolutely. The thing that I love to start off with by saying is that I was just kind of a fat little boy. I wasn't given any gifts, but here was really what it came down to. I was just dumb enough to believe that I could do it.
How many times I've spoken to guys that have said that is we're too stupid to do anything else.
Yeah, and it's like, all the odds were stacked against me. As a youngster, I was overweight. Don't get me wrong. I didn't have any sob story. I wasn't molested. There was nothing that made me a pathetic little fat boy other than my insatiable love for cookies and ice cream.
Well, I can relate to that.
I was the little fucking guy who would grab the cookie jar or the gallon of ice cream and go hide so nobody could catch me so I could finish the whole goddamn thing, And, I would always get caught trying to run out of the house with a bunch of food I wasn't supposed to be eating, and if I got out, I was loving life, But, funny enough, even in those days, I had these, once I first got affected and kind of saw that first time I saw Conan the Barbarian, I'm sure we've all had just about everybody's been affected by Arnold somehow. I remember it was like just this burn in my chest, my stomach. Some had changed, but I was still looking for the answers in the goddamn bottom of the cookie jar, So that part of me didn't leave for a long time. And ultimately what happened was I really developed myself a pretty whopping eating disorder. As an adult right now, I'm still a full-blown sugar addict. You can't say, hey, if I bite of this cookie, fuck, I'll eat that cookie. I'll eat everybody else's cookie, and I'll get the car keys, and I'll be driving to the goddamn store to buy more. So much like a alcoholic or a heroin addict, they just have to not do it. So just who I am. I have an addictive, extreme personality, and knowing your strengths and your weaknesses really helps you manage yourself, if you will. But my story goes all back as the little guy, and I just, as soon as I knew what I wanted. That was my biggest blessing. I knew what I wanted. As soon as I was affected, saw that movie Conan the Barbarian. I knew clearly what I wanted. I had no idea how I was going to get there. And I was just dumb enough to believe that I could do it and not listen to people who told me I couldn't. And I think along the way,
those Arnold films and things like that, was it bodybuilding that you wanted to do, or did you just wanted to be strong? You wanted to,
brother, that is such a great question. I don't even think I knew. I could literally, there was one point where I was my early teens. I thought that I might be gay. And it was only because every time I saw a big dude, I was just so enthralled. And I was so happy when I was like 15, I saw the first ever like large muscled up female. And I was just as attracted to her. And I was like, thank God, because those were the days. I have nothing against someone, I have plenty of friends that are gay. But, as a fat little boy in those days, and I lived, keep in mind, I lived in a very, very conservative area, very kind of a rural farming area, there was gay people in school, nobody knew about them. So I was, to answer your question, I don't know. I just knew that I wanted to be a big, strong guy. And all the way until probably once I started looking in the magazines, then I started to realize, okay, bodybuilding is what I want to do. But it was only because that's what I saw. Then as soon as I saw my first strongman competition, I was like, holy shit, what is this? And it was like, I just kept getting these fires lit inside me, and that was one of the, when you go into a gym and you see a guy and he looks big, and then you watch him lift, like, holy shit, this guy's so much stronger than he looks.
Yeah.
Well, even as a fat little boy, like as a junior in high school, I was the second person in my class to squat 405. which is not bad for a 17-year-old, but then ultimately, as time moved forward, I just realized I would become a pretty big dude, but I was so much stronger than everybody else, around me. And that's where one of my buddies, actually, one of my training partners, he came to me and said, look, he said, dude, you are so much stronger than everybody else. He goes, it pisses me off. He goes, but will you please go try one of these competitions? I was like, okay, because keep in mind, at that point, I'm, in my mid-20s and, I'm 260 pounds and I'm fucking cock strong. And, but I still had the mind of that fat little boy. Physically, I'd progressed so much faster. I mean, even now, my wife will come up and pinch my butt. And I don't pinch my fat. That just comes out of me, I still look in the mirror and see that fat 15-year-old boy, but
I think a lot of us.
So to answer your question, I didn't even really know. I mean, that's what the thing was. I just knew that I had this fire to get big and strong. And then basically I kind of just told you how my entry into strongman happened. I was in kind of my latter part of my 20s, and my buddy finally gave me the push, and everything fell into place. I had trained so hard off the radar. When I finally showed up to a competition, I was just wiping people out. Did no idea what I was doing. Won my first contest as a amateur strongman, went to a pro qualifier, won that one to the point where I didn't even have to do the last event. I'd already won. So, I was just turning the competition upside down. Went to my first pro contest. Now, keep in mind, this is my third ever strongman competition. I meet Bill Kazmaier. I'm competing with people I've been watching on TV, Carl Gillingham, Mark Philippi, Magnus Samuelsson was there as a guest. It was like, this is all happening too fast. I'm just a fat little boy,
Fat little boy's holding his own.
So it was a pretty like it really comes down. I was just pushing, and I was just kind of, as the doors started open and I started jumping through them,
So what was the first pro show that you did?
First pro show was, it was Mark Philippi actually hosted it. It was in Las Vegas. God damn. I want to say it was 2002.
Okay.
It was called this was back when IFSA was all one big thing, because remember everything got broken up, kind of like anyway. So it was very, very rigid. You had to place in the top 5 of a pro contest to get to pro nationals. And so that was my first one. So I turned pro as a strongman like in April. I went a month and a half later, I think it was like late May or June, to Mark Philippi's contest in Las Vegas. Keep in mind, I'm walking up and, I'm meeting Phil Pfister. These are guys I'm watching on TV. I'm just shitting in my pants. Anyway, I placed 5th, or placed 6th, excuse me, but somebody else that placed above me was already qualified. So I got the qualifying spot. Cool. And so then my next contest was pro nationals. And, at this point, I'm getting a little over my head when it comes to understanding how the sport actually works with technique and stuff. Me being aggressive and strong is not doing the trick much anymore, but it was just enough to place me in the top 10, which then I got noticed, and I started getting, the way I looked, I started getting invites to international contests. I actually won my first and only pro contest. November of that year was North American Strongest Man, Hugo Girard's contest. And, I'm thinking, my Jesus Christ, this is like my 5th show. I'm thinking this is the best thing ever. I just won, little did I know that was going to be the only one that I would win over the course of my career.
Well, to win one is a great achievement. So, and I know you've been on the podium in a number of international shows, haven't you? Yeah. No, there's no question that, I got to be an international player very quickly, and I could compete, I can't say, we all have to be honest with ourselves looking back. I could compete at that level. I was never the guy that was, looked at as going to be potentially the winner.
but I was in the hunt to cause some stink along the way, and so it was a great experience, and the best part about it is, that part of me still lived. I still believed I could do it. If you don't believe you can do it, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. you have to have that mental belief in yourself. Otherwise, you're going to get steamrolled by these guys, because there's a lot of egos and a lot of confidence that goes around in all these kind of sports. And if you don't 100% believe you deserve to be there, then these guys will stample all over you.
Well, the contest that I won, right? So that was in North America. That was 2000 and whatever, 2002 or 3. Well, that qualified me to go to what was called World Muscle Power.
Yeah.
Which was basically the finalists from the year before of World's Strongest Man.
That so was basically back then.
Oh my God. I mean, all of a sudden, I keep in mind, I'm still the fat little boy in my mind. I think it was probably my 8th contest. I'm getting more experience for sure. But every contest I show up, there's something I've never done before, and you know what that's like. When you're doing something for the first time in a contest, that's never goes very well. And so, but I remember it was like, there was a couple of events there that, played well in my favor, and I was able to do really well in a few, which then, kind of took the ones where I wasn't doing well. And I think I placed 8th in that out of 12. Coming in a guy that's brand new, I think I was just expected to ride the bottom of the barrel, And so that was when, I think from an international level, that's where I started to get a little bit more respect. I had a number of guys after the show come up and say, "Hey, you did a really good job." And to me, that was validation, because these are guys that I've been, watching on TV, and, they know what they're doing. I'm sitting there watching the guy before me, trying to figure out what the hell was going on.
When the guys you kind of compete against start giving you respect and saying you're good, that's when it means something. So who was in this competition then? Just go through some of the names that were competing.
Oh shit. It was
is this 2003 kind of time?
Marius. Yes. Yeah. So Zadrunas, and this is when Vasil Verstev was just coming through. He won, I think, that year or the next year. So this is basically Zadrunas, Marius, Vasil, Magnus Samuelson, God, who else? Raymonsburg Manis. I mean, you basically look at the top 10 from the year before. Somebody couldn't show up, and Mark Philippi actually got to go. So I was so happy, because he was like a big brother to me,
That's cool.
But and then Hugo was actually really cool. He was very welcoming, because he understood how new I was. But after that contest, when I started to get a little props from the guys, I actually felt so much more comfortable getting off the plane. Because when you show up to a location, you're like, oh shit, But when you feel like you belong, it's so much better.
It is. I remember my first international, and you're shitting yourself. Oh yeah. You've seen these guys on TV, and now it's time to compete against them. But no, it's amazing how that confidence grows after you do a few shows against them, and you realize, okay, they're not that far ahead. Go away, work harder, get closer, and that's the process that most guys go through. You kind of think, okay, they're not that much better than me. I can go and put the work in, learn from them.
Yeah.
Most of the guys back then as well, even now, they're so friendly. They give you advice. They try and help you. Events, and it's always been a friendly sport.
And 100%. And looking back, it was me. There was nobody else. I was the one that felt like I didn't belong. They were all welcoming. I just didn't understand the vibe yet.
Sure.
But hey, here's a kind of funny little side note story about that World Muscle Power, right? So Marius actually was in the room next to me, and this is the era where he's just crushing everybody. Although he didn't win that contest, which was a total surprise. But once I tell you the story, I think you'll know why. So
I know anyway,
but he was. Everybody gets off the bus after day one, and we're like a pack of locusts going to eat so we can rest and get ready for day two. Marius swings in there, grabs a Coke, goes to his room, gets showered up, you know, basically has somebody pick him up, and he's going out that night, right? And we're all, you know, of course, we're just thinking, holy shit. Anyway, so I'm getting up the next day really early because I want to try to eat twice. I want to eat breakfast and then a second breakfast right before the kitchen closes. Well, so I'm opening up my door, and right about the same time, Marius's door's open, and this, I don't know how old she was. She's probably 19, 20 years old. And here's the best part about it. Just the biggest smile on her face, right? But she looked like she just straight up got beat up. I'm not saying he was hitting her, but I'm saying they were in there having some good times. I mean, but she couldn't have been happier, you know.
As long as she was happy, that's all that matters, eh?
Oh yeah. When I say beat up, I don't mean like she was like visibly bruised up, but I mean she was tore up, man. He had that little girl all night long.
Did he have not such a good performance then in the contest? He'd had a better performance than
you know, for him, third place pissed him off, you know, but that's what happened. He ended up getting third. Man. Yeah, so that was the strongman career was a great time. I loved it. You know, it was I was definitely a little bit on the undersized though. I was, you know, not quite as tall. You know, I always build myself at 6'1", but I never was. I was, you know, maybe 6 foot if I got just the right stretch, you know. And you know, the strength was not an issue, but the short limbs and levers was, you know, obviously a challenge. But, you know, ultimately, I was able to get my weight up pretty good. I mean, I went all the way up into I think, you know, keep in mind, I'm trying to gain weight. So I got, you know, just drank a liter of water, fully clothed, get on the scale, and I was just over 330 a few times. But I think realistically, I competed mostly around probably 310 to 315 is probably where I competed the most, at least once I got a little bit more established. When I was younger, I was still trying to pack on some weight. But that really was what caused me to, you know, that's kind of what broke me down. I ended up having a few, you know, rupturing a few discs along the way. I actually competed on one of the ruptured discs for about 3 years. I was like, I'm finally here. There's no way I'm stopping now. But that's what really kind of drove me to retire. So
that was kind of the time where suddenly guys started getting really big as well. I think Zadrunas around that time started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we saw the likes of Brian Shaw come into the sport, and you know the guys monsters for a few years, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean the era, I mean Marius kind of carved out an era for a strongman like myself, because it was called the athletic era, that we moved around a lot more. He was just such a hit. You know, they started making they tailored the sport a little bit more towards him, because he's this big, strong guy. He can lift, but he can move. And so that athletic era, like if you put me in, you know, 10 years forward, you know, now I'm dealing with the developed Brian Shaws. I mean, hell, I was actually a judge at the amateur contest where Brian turned pro. Okay. You know, we're just like, you know, he was like 305 pounds. I mean, face looked like a runway model. I mean, he was fresh out of college, you know.
Slim Brian.
I mean, Brian, I'm telling you, Brian was like, I mean, you're just looking at his face before he really started packing on the weight. He had a career in modeling. He was good.
I remember doing a contest with Brian and a few other Americans, and he was so much smaller. I've got pictures of it, and he's so much smaller. He really did end up packing on a lot of size, but I guess it was just the way that the sport went. It just became so heavy. The Arnolds really pushed the limits, and the guys got so big for that. But Marius, and, you know, you guys were doing all the loading events and the running around with you know, longer farmers walks, longer distance yokes. It's definitely changed over the time, but I think we see.
Well, I was quite lucky because, I was quite lucky because you're talking about how things cycle like that. Well, I kind of plopped in at the right time for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I come in, you know, 10 years earlier, 10 years later, I probably wouldn't have had the career that I did, you know, because as we know, there's so many guys that just bust their ass and take it all the risks and do everything, and they never make it to be international player. And if you really never get to where, if you're one of the guys that's always paying for yourself, that's a tough existence in the sport, you know?
Yeah, it is.
So I was very thankful, man.
But you're not someone that's just been able to go pro in one sport. You've been, I mean, pro wrestler, which let's talk about the pro wrestling. I mean, you've got the perfect voice for pro wrestling.
Well, you know, it's funny because
I love watching your
interviews. Thank you, brother. Thank you. I was told that the whole time. And, you know, when once I started to get some notoriety, you start doing interviews and stuff in Strongman, everybody said, man, you got the voice. You should be a wrestler. I was never a wrestling fan. I mean, I enjoyed watching wrestling only if there was a big motherfucker in the ring. Because again, I just wanted to see the big guy, you know? So once I ended up, you know, I was kind of forced. I shouldn't say forced. I mean, I could have continued as Strongman, but it was definitely a path leading nowhere. And if I wanted to continue to, you know, yes, in those days, people were actually starting to make money in the sport too. That was the .com boom. There's all sorts of startup companies. Like I had it was a drink. It's called Havoc Energy Drink. It was a startup company. All I do is wear a t-shirt and they gave me $3,000 a month. That's because of the .com boom. There was so much, and keep in mind, I was nothing special. I was just, you know, someone that they could have a nice, you know, they could have a nice write-off from. So there was ways to make money. I actually had an agent at that point who was, you know, getting different deals for me. And don't get me wrong, these were, you know, these are not major deals, but enough that an agent would take me on. Well, he said, look, if you want to continue on with me, you're going to have to go to a different platform. I said, well, what's that? And he said, pro wrestling. I'm like, holy shit, pro wrestling. I'm 34 years old, man. I never even watched it. I mean, to be honest, just so you know how little I knew about it, when someone gets pinned, it's a three count.
Yeah.
I thought it was a 10 count. That's how little I knew about the actual, you know, so basically, I have a back surgery recovered, and he basically he put together some fake resumes about me wrestling. And I went to a school where I learned how to do it, you know, because it's a dance, you know. And basically we got a phone call and I got a shot in Japan. So kind of like my Strongman career, you know, I went from, you know, basically doing, you know, unknown to, you know, national, international player all inside of a year. Well, the same thing with wrestling. So I basically did like probably 6 or 7 those little shitty matches that you see like in high school gymnasiums, because I needed to get some footage of me in the ring so my agent could send it over there. Yeah. Next thing you know, he says, hey, you know, you pack your bags, you're going to Japan. I'm like, what? So like my 7th or 8th ever wrestling match was a pay-per-view in Japan. And I'm just shitting my pants, man. Again, I'm right back to where I started with. I'm way over my head. I don't know what I'm doing, you know. And it was all because of the way I looked. You know, it was they figured out very quickly my resume was bullshit. But the fact that, you know, in Japan, the style is very different. They call it strong style. So you really bang people around in there. Somebody gets a bloody nose, nobody cares. And so I was just determined the wrestling world was stiff. So I was just very stiff. You know, I hit people hard, which then made it easy for them to make it look, you know, like it was really hard. And I basically, every time I knocked somebody down, I flexed my muscles and screamed out into the crowd. And that was enough to basically start my career. So basically now, again, I'm right back where they're trying to learn the skill of something, because I got put into the, you know, that upper echelon. I can't say sport in this one, but it's sports entertainment. And so bam, off goes my wrestling career. So I ended up getting a contract actually in Mexico, because I needed experience. And down there, you just wrestle a ton. You can wrestle every day, sometimes twice a day, because it's so popular. It's crazy. I mean, Mexico City, you can be in a Friday night show televised, right? You get up, go to Starbucks the next day, and you're on the front page of the sports section of the newspaper. No other country that I know of reports on wrestling in the regular newspaper, you know? And so anyway, so that's kind of where I got my ring time. And then at that point, there was one of the scouts from a company called New Japan Pro Wrestling. And that was really my goal, to get on with them. And next thing you know, pow, I'm working with them. And they worked out some sort of a deal where they couldn't just take me from Consejo Mundial was the company in Mexico. So I was basically kind of like a dirty dish towel, man. I was just being thrown back and forth. So sometimes I'd work a match on a Friday night in, Arena, Mexico, and I'd be on a plane the next morning headed to Japan. I'd be over there for a week and then go back to Mexico. It was, as a pro strongman, you think you got a pretty good grip on travel until you do something like this. Holy shit. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I hope I never see another airplane again, at least on the inside. It would be very often, I would have to sometimes go to Japan for 2-3 days and come home. I mean, you never really adapt to that time change, So anyway, keep in mind, I don't want to sound like a victim or a bitch. This is all I ever wanted. I mean, when I said I had to, it was difficult, but at the same time, you're loving every minute of it. It's just like when you start, getting some notoriety in anything and you start getting pulled in different directions, it feels good. Yeah, so yeah, that went really well. They actually teamed me up with a guy named Nanabu Nakanishi, excuse me. And this is a legitimate badass, because I came from Pro Strongman. That's how I was marketed, because they like legitimacy. Well, Nanabu was, he represented Japan 2 times in the Olympics for Greco-Roman wrestling. So this dude was a legitimate badass, hard ass, and so they teamed us up together. And I'm just this big, fucking noisy, burping in the ring, American. And he's this really, kind of really straight-laced, which is the Japanese culture. So we made this pair that they loved. And so the first year together as a tag team, we ended up getting voted Japan's #1 tag team. Wow. And so then, boom, it just took off right there again, until, unfortunately, the following year, late that year, Nakanishi broke his neck in the ring, and our tag team was put to the sideline. So he ended up, recovering, but he was never the same. He was in a hospital for months. And so, at that point, my career as a wrestler was just going like this. But then once he broke his neck, it's leveled off, and it just kind of slowly started doing this back to the point where end of 2013 was my last year. And so.
How long did you do it for?
So I retired from my last contest of Pro Strongman was 2007, spring of 2007. I went to Japan that beginning of 2008. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 6 years. Yeah. And let me tell you, that 6 years went by fast, because it's like you're just on the move the whole time. So yeah, so I basically, in that setting, you can do 2 things. You get released and you can go back to the bottom and try to climb your way back to the top. I told myself, no way. I'm not going. I did 6 of those matches in a high school gym, not doing it again.
Didn't want to do it.
Yeah, so I just that was it. And so I came home, to be honest, tail between my legs, because you're basically told you're not wanted. It's just you'd rather continue, but you don't have the opportunity. So I came home and, I tousled around a little bit. I was still had the juices flowing. So, basically I said, well, what's the opportunity now? My agent at that point, he was like, look, you're 42 years old. We're still buddies, but that was the end of our relationship and him representing me, because at 42, I wasn't going anywhere that was going to make him any money. So anyway, so I thought, I should try my hand in bodybuilding. So I've always been told I look like a bodybuilder. You know, I was told I sounded like a wrestler, so I went and did that. Why not? I was told I look like a bodybuilder. Let's see what happens here.
Yeah, I mean, your physique has always been incredible, from strongman through the wrestling, and obviously now doing the bodybuilding. It's been a big, major factor to a lot of your success.
100%. So basically come home. I got home just before Christmas in December 2013. Did my first ever bodybuilding contest. I think it was like it was the very end of March. So, I mean, I really didn't even have time to do a full prep, you know, because a standard prep is 16 weeks and I didn't have the full amount of time. But, you know, I was far enough along. You know, I started my prep with abs. A lot of guys, amateurs, don't, you know. Anyway, so I win that contest. And again, I just didn't realize how much above I was going to be amongst the other amateurs. I mean, it was like I walked in there, and granted, I mean, I've been sponsored by, you know, nutrition companies, you know, all the way through. So I walk in there and I'm wearing, actually I was wearing my MHP sweatsuit with my name on it, you know, and everybody thought I was the fucking guest poser. You know, I was like, no, I'm here to compete. I mean, the people that obviously the promoters knew, but the other competitors, you know, and so I go out there and funny enough, you know, I just needed stage time. So I competed in the Masters because I was old enough to do Masters. And then I competed in the Open. And you see pictures of me out there with the Masters. And it was like, okay, did this guy accidentally come out with the wrong group, you know? Because it was a local Masters, you know? I mean, these guys are, you know, nothing, no, you know, not dissing them. It was just a whole different, you know. Anyway, so I win that first contest, end up meeting Hani Rambod, who's like one of the best trainers on the planet, you know, Phil Heath, Jay Cutler, you name it. And he's like, hey, so, you know, you gotta, this is your first contest, man. He goes, you got to go. He goes, there's a few other places you can go here in the next couple months and try to go win your pro card. Yeah. And so basically I did it again and went and won my pro card. So I actually went to, with Hani's advice, he said, look, he goes, once you're pro, you can compete in any division. He goes, if you go to the Masters Nationals, he goes, they have a 35, a 40, and a 45. I was 40. He goes, but check this out. He goes, everybody that does the USA that doesn't win, as soon as they turn 35, they go. So if you go win that 35, you're basically, you know, you're proving yourself as being okay to be in the Open. And that's exactly what I did. So I went, and so again, now second ever bodybuilding contest, I'm pro. And you know,
annoyingly talented men, aren't you? They can do it all.
but keep in mind, there's nothing. There's no talent here, brother. This is just ignorance is bliss and a lot of fucking hard work. You know. And to be totally honest, if you really want my secret of this whole fucking thing, it's been my commitment to my diet. My diet has been just what allowed me to maneuver this whole thing, and that's how I learned so much about it. But so I get on Dave Palumbo, who's kind of like almost like a bodybuilding historian, if you will, you know? Yeah. He basically gets a hold of me and says, hey, I want you to come on my podcast. So I got on his pod. He was basically that night of the show, or excuse me, I can't remember, it was that night or the next day. He's like, I want you to understand there's a lot of people that are pretty pissed off that you just came in and won your pro card. He goes, myself included, I never won mine. And I was in pursuit of this for over 10 years. Most guys never get it. And you show up in your second contest and you win your pro card. It wasn't until that moment I realized, holy shit, I guess that was something big. Yeah. You know, I've just always been, this is what I'm going to do. And I guess I get these blinders on. And once those blinders go on, I don't really get affected by the things around me that could be good or bad. Yeah. Somebody tell me you can't do it. You know, I don't hear that. A buddy asking me to go drink beers, I don't hear that either, you know? And so basically, so I'm pro in 2 contests, go to my pro debut is my third ever bodybuilding contest, and I placed fifth. So I podiumed in my third ever bodybuilding contest as a pro. And to be totally honest, I mean, in terms of what I'll do in the bodybuilding world, it's not going to get any better than that. Turning pro in 2 contests and then placing in the top 5 of my first pro debut, but third ever contest. Those are pretty big marks. It's like the more I compete, the less I dilute myself. You know, because I'm 49 years old. Fuck, man, I have no illusions of winning Mr. Olympia here. Yeah, if I can go into the open class and I can compete, kind of like in Strongman, you know, I knew that when I showed up to these contests, I wasn't going to beat Morris. I wasn't going to beat Zadrunas, but I was fucking digging. And keep in mind, you show up knowing that anything can happen and you give it everything you got. But the reality still sits in the back of your mind. So, you know, now that I'm older, I have no illusions of winning Mr. Olympia. But if I can get in there and compete with the open class, that's a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, Jesus Christ, guys are 20 years younger than me, you know?
So is that your goal, is to get onto the Olympia stage?
It was, but realistically, I just don't see it happen. I hate to say that it's not going to happen, because that kind of takes the foundation of the whole idea that you can do anything away. But from the realistic side of me, with the way that guys are coming up, just like in Strongman, I mean, the last 2 years have been, these guys are 26 years old. I mean, they're young, they're strong, they're just getting better too fast. You know,
I have that. You know, I've just retired from Strongman for the second time, but very much that same kind of thought process is, you get to that point where you've put your body through so much, and these younger guys are just getting better and better. Now I know I can commit 100% and still be damn competitive, but I believe my window of winning the world's strongest man title has gone. You know, I'm closing in on 40
because
I'm older than
100%
world's strongest man's ever been, and it's the commitment to do it as well, as you know yourself. They take so much dedication, discipline, hard work, and selfishness as well. And, you know, I think as you get older, you've got other things that you have to, you know, family, businesses, things like that become more of a priority. Whereas in my 20s, all I cared about was winning. You know, there was nothing else.
You know, and see like you said, in the 20s, when we were younger, we realized we were in that phase where we could improve just as fast as anybody else. But now I'm going to be honest, I don't improve as fast as a 29-year-old. It just doesn't happen that way, you know, as to where you at almost 40, you're not improving as fast as the guy that's 26.
You're just trying to get back to your best a lot of the time, that's difficult as well.
Totally. And so, and to keep in mind, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, it's bringing a little reality into it. So what I look at in 49 years old is, I just want to stay. If I can stay active and compete, for me, that's a hell of a challenge, and I think it's very realistic. And if I was to somehow, because bodybuilding is very different, in you could hit it just right and have a look that's just insane. Strongman, it has nothing to do with if you dropped your sodium in the water just right, if you're going to win. You know what I mean? It's not, it's a little less scientific in terms of being strong and winning a strongman contest. But in bodybuilding, you see guys that the day before, they would have won the whole goddamn thing. I mean, it's happened to Big Ramy a few times where he just missed it by a day. And so that being said, it does keep that, idea alive that, hey, you know, you could. But the way that bodybuilding works is you have to win a contest or you have to accumulate enough points. And I'll be honest, there's no way the guys that get the points, they compete 4, 5, 6 times to get those points.
Yeah.
That ain't happening at almost 50 years old. And then that leaves, okay, I got to hit it just right and win a contest. Well, with these guys that have been nowadays, the same with the strength world, you know, they start working on the craft when they're teenagers. Yeah. You know, when I didn't pick up my first Strongman until I was like late 20s. You know, now that's, I mean, I think Sojourner was kind of the first generation of being exposed to it early. I think he had been competing since a teen, or had been training with strongman events since a teen. And he was the first guy that just left everybody behind. You know, he was, you know, he had everything. He had the strength, he had the mind, he had the experience. There was no angle to take him down, you know?
Yeah. Just an incredible athlete. And like you say, that it just became, now guys train specifically to do strongman, whereas we were all coming from different things, and you know, you'd have powerlifters, athletes of different sports, and there's, oh, let's try this. Now it's like MMA, you know? MMA now you're a complete mixed martial artist, whereas back then it was one guy did judo, karate, boxing, whatever it might be, and let's just see who's the best. Whereas now they're fully trained in everything, and it's the same with the strongman. Talking of strongman,
I mean, you know, I actually preferred the UFC back then, you know, like when it was like the judo guy. And keep in mind, I love everything about strongman at the current time, but it's also fun to go back and watch those ones where they brought the power lifter, the football. That was another level of entertainment as well, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you talk about the UFC. I used to love the one-day tournaments they had, and, you know, to win like 3 times, just completely nuts. But I wanted to talk about the way strongman's evolved now, where guys are training with coaches, they're working with nutritionists.
Yeah.
You yourself very much into coaching. We are working together. I haven't announced it yet, but John is helping me get, hopefully the goal is to be in the best shape I've ever been in my 40s. That's the focus. I want to,
we're looking for some abs, aren't we? We're looking for some abs.
Yeah, we're going to get some abs. You know, I almost had some abs a couple of years back. Now we're going to fully devote training towards Uncle Oz getting some abs. But
that's it.
A lot of the strongmen now are taking nutrition more seriously, because when you came in, you were probably one of the few that was taking it seriously.
Yeah. I mean, funny enough, to answer your question, 100% correct. My nutrition, I took it serious only because if you wound the clock back to where I was that fat little boy, and I started to realize, okay, I need to start making progress, but I couldn't stop overeating. My system is developed because I created a system for myself to get strong and lean where I could overeat, because I couldn't stop overeating. And so my system in the early days was all about, I mean, granted, if I wasn't overeating, I would have been doing a lot better. But the difference was I was overeating massive amounts of steak and massive amounts of what you'd call building material. And so when the new generation of strength athletes and strongman, you know, you just couldn't possibly be a guy who just eats pizza, you know, and eats ice cream and compete with the guys that have a nutritionist that understand how to dial in that athlete based upon the reaction of their body from the diet. It's just two different. If I didn't have my diet as my secret weapon, so to speak, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I mean, I guarantee you, I would have done none of what I did. I mean, in strongman, I was, you know, up in that, you know, that 325, 330 at the peak. Well, I had to get right down under 300 pounds quick and be looking good and be very agile to be bouncing around the ring, you know. And then, you know, a handful of years later, next thing you know, I've taken my nutrition to be able to strip all the fat off me. And so nutrition is, here's the thing, what most people don't understand about nutrition is it's like the biggest piece of the equation. Most people think the training is very important, but it's like, okay, the training is the cart that belongs behind the horse.
Yeah.
The nutrition is the horse. And then, of course, you get these idiots that think that gear is like a magic weapon, you know, when we all know that, you know, gear is the icing that goes on a cake that's been baked to perfection. That's how it works. You can't just, nobody wants a big mouthful of icing.
Well, some people do, but yeah, I think that's a point that people don't appreciate getting the fundamentals right in terms of getting your training right, getting your nutrition 100%. Right, getting your recovery right as well. Those three things for me, I'm kind of working with athletes, are the most important things. Everything else is that 5% on top of that. But if you're not getting the 95% right, that 5% means nothing. And that's
it literally. And that's what people it's like most people cannot wrap their brains around the fact that, you know, because it's their knowledge base is shallow enough that they think that they just go to the gym and they work hard, you know, and people still think that they can out-train a poor diet. It is impossible. You can't possibly do enough fucking stair climber to burn off a pizza. It's just not possible, you know? But I like the way you describe that, brother. That is like, if people in general registered this in terms of understanding how important the nutrition was, I wouldn't have a coaching business, because the strength of my business is the nutrition. And when I finally get people to realize, hey, you know, I will tell some of my younger athletes or just people that are trying to change their lives, you don't get to go to the gym unless you executed your diet. It doesn't work. This is a privilege. The gym is a privilege. The gym's the fun part. Sure. You think about it, eating is 18 hours of your day. The gym is where you get to go blow off some steam and have some fun. Let your ego hang out. You can't, you know, most people, they just don't want to put in that. It's the rigors of the meal prep and the timing. That's the part that's like behind the curtain. Yeah. You know, the gym or competition, that's the stuff that everybody wants to see, but you're so much better if you do your work behind the curtain, and people just don't get that. But I think that's where look at the current, you know, some of these monsters now. And you got guys that are 400 pounds that are not fat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole different species, you know, because all of the elements are being put together, you know, and that's really when it comes right down to it. I get people that come to me that like, I'm like the last ditch effort before they have like the gastric bypass, which is to have their stomach stapled up or whatever. And I'll tell these people, listen, I don't care if you exercise or not, and they don't want to exercise, but I'll yank 80, 90 pounds of fat off these people, and they have more energy and they're not hungry, because you can basically fuel the metabolism with food if you know how to do it. And it's not as simple as eating more, but when people like you, like you see, I've got you eating quite often. Never being hungry is something that I'm really driving home with you.
Yeah.
But it's not as simple as just eat more and don't be hungry, because unfortunately people try to take one simple rule and try to run with it. Well,
they'll try and eat.
Success is 100 rules.
A lot of people just try to have like a few massive meals, you know, and force it all in one go. And obviously your body can't process as effectively.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Where do you think a lot of strength athletes go wrong with diet?
Well, I think when it comes down to it now, I think once the strength athlete gets to the higher level and they see the guys on top, they see what they're working on their diets, then they finally take the step. I think the biggest mistake they make is they don't take the initiative ahead of time. Because if you took the initiative to work with your diet, whether you are experimenting yourself or you hired a coach or you did a lot of reading, just expand your knowledge base on diets, because it's the bottom line is, like we said, the diet is the horse that goes in front of the cart. If you're spending all your time focused on the cart, you know, I think that's the biggest mistake. Now, when it comes to to answer your question further, there's all these phrases that get thrown around. You got to eat big to get big. Well, it doesn't mean sitting down and eating 3 fucking huge meals. You can eat a lot of food over a bunch of small meals and have a totally different outcome than eating until you can't breathe. I mean, keep in mind, that's the world I came from. I mean, when I talked about a sugar addict, I mean, I would, so let me paint a picture for you. So I'm 25, 26 years old, strong as hell. I mean, benching 500 pounds for reps in the gym, you know, squatting 600 for 10 in the gym. These are gym lifts. This is not competition stuff, but you know, anybody is happy moving weights around like that. Well, huge eating problem, but nobody really knows. Well, one day I've fucking fallen off the wagon again, and I'm laying on my couch. It's a leather couch. And I got a pair, just a regular pair of bikini underwear on, little brief underwear, you know, trying to look fucking sexy as a young man, you know, I'm sure. Anyway, I've eaten until I can't breathe. I mean, I'm having a hard time breathing. I'm laying on my couch. There's a football game on, and I'm on my back, and I've got a Tupperware full of M&Ms on my chest. I'm not looking at the TV. I'm sitting there breathing very shallowly because I can't take a deep breath. And I'm slowly, one by one, feeding myself one more M&M at a time. And a buddy of mine who was supposed to come over and watch the game, well, I totally forgot. He walks in, he sees me, and he's all, "What the fuck are you doing?" I mean, it was like, he was just like, did you get fucking hit by a truck? What the fuck is wrong? It was like I'd hidden all this stuff. And it was just straight up embarrassing. Sure. Because I had this disorder of sugar that I couldn't control. And it was like, you know, I stand up and I look like I'm pregnant because I got so much food in me. I'm sweating bullets because my insulin's so spiked. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, you know, nutrition is one of those things, going back to our conversation, nutrition is one of those things that could really help you or hurt you. And unfortunately, at this time, I think if you took strength athletes as a whole, you know, powerlifters, you know, strongmen, even Highland gamers, I think unfortunately there's more still that are subscribing to the kind of the old school of eat big, get big, calories in. You know, calorie is really kind of a weird term because it doesn't tell you if there's any value in what you're eating. Yeah. You know, the key is to eat things with value, eat things that actually help your body. And I think that's another thing that's totally misunderstood too. People are counting macros. Well, you could have 50 grams of protein of a really, really low quality protein that does very little for your recovery, or 50 grams of a very, very complete protein that totally changes the speed of your recovery. But people don't look past the number. And I think that's probably right now, I think that's the biggest hiccup for people, is to go getting right down to the answer to your question. People are still looking at numbers. Yeah. And it's not numbers. We got to look at value.
Yeah. I mean, you can have 1,000 calories of a tub of Ben and Jerry's, or 1,000 calories of beef or chicken is a little bit different.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. So but I think when it comes down to it, we're going to see more and more, because now I think that, you know, the cat's out of the bag. People are realizing, okay, there's something here. It's just the people that are still don't want to, you know, apply themselves. Because once you actually see what's involved, there's a lot of work to it.
I'm seeing more and more high level athletes take their nutrition seriously. And there's still a big amount of kind of up and comers that are still just eating whatever. And you can see, sometimes they do just get into that habit of just thinking, I need to be bigger, rather than, you know, adding the right kind of weight. And it's just looking at the scales, looking at the amount of calories they're eating. I don't think a lot of these videos online, you know, see these stupid 20,000 calorie challenges and stuff like that. It's all, you know.
Well, here's the thing too. When guys are eating the wrong way, they're pushing themselves, they're getting hurt. And now all of a sudden you've got a whole new piece of the equation that enters if someone's serious. Now you've got painkillers in the equation. Now you've got the overuse of anabolics. So, I mean, painkillers is something that you understand what it's like at the highest level. I mean, when you're at the highest level, if you got to take these painkillers to perform for the day, you're going to do it. And, you know, at the international level, there's plenty of doctors that are happy to give it to you. You know, and I know for myself, I went through, not so much in strongman, but I went through a lot of bouts with painkillers in wrestling because, you know, you get hurt, you use it to get better, but then next thing you know, you need it to feel normal. And I'm telling you, man, I really think my lucky stars that my wife gutted it through some of those times with me, because, you know, when a substance becomes more important than the really important things in your life changes pretty quickly. And unfortunately, I think that's one of the things that is tough for guys, is they get hurt. They use some sort of a drug or a painkiller to get better. Next thing you know, they don't care about the sport anymore. And that always really kind of pains me to see, because I mean, I've been to the point where I remember when I was wrestling, I remember a few times, you know, it was like, I'm taking this stuff so I can do my job, but the drug became more important than the job. And now it's like, then you really lost perspective at that point.
I've seen it a few too many times in the sport, where incredibly talented athletes end up messing themselves up because of it, and cutting.
Yeah.
But no, the knowledge I think now is much better. There's a lot more information available online for people. You know, it's not all doom and gloom. I think information for everything has just become so much better. Training, nutrition, supplementation, everything.
Yeah.
It's definitely improved. Anyway, moving away from that, I know you're a busy man, but before you go, just what's the future hold for you? What are your goals? What are your focuses right now?
Well, I mean, for me, life is always about making forward progress. And so I've got my business, obviously my family now, my girls I'm an empty nester now. So that's kind of a different phase of fatherhood, but I've got, you know, my business has been really well. And really I kind of turning a little bit more towards the true, I mean, you always want to make money, but at the same time, the helping of people. I've really had that shift in my life of, you know, it's like to do something for money, of course, you're going to be paid, but then to have that thing where you're the helping people and trying to like make a difference. That's something that has entered the equation for me in the last probably year, very strong. And it's actually really fulfilling, because, you know, when you finally do well enough with your life and just, I guess, just overall how you feel, to start to be able to just do things because you're trying to make a difference, you know. And then you also think about too, I'm sure you've had the thoughts, what am I going to remembered for? Is it just because I was just because I could lift up heavy shit? Because I could flex my muscle in the ring, because I could, you know, do a front double bicep, wear next to no clothing on a stage? Or is it, man, that guy really changed my life? Yeah. And I think that's the thing where I am right now, where, especially with the people that I coach, I don't do anything anymore where I just say, here, do this. It's let me teach you. And that's been really exhilarating, because the amount of lives that I change. I mean, wives sometimes will send me an email and they're like, hey, I was against him doing this, but now he's happier. He has more energy. We have a better sex life. And so when the quality of a marriage actually gets affected by something you're doing, and keep in mind, it's not like I'm being hired for that. I'm being hired to help someone, you know, get in better shape. But when all the positive things kind of roll, you know, positive stuff that comes from it is way beyond what you're actually, that's what kind of lit me out. That, man, I need to push deeper into this. And so that's been probably, I'm still kind of figuring out how I'm going to make the big push, but I've got a few different things in the works, you know.
That's awesome.
But
no, that's really
yeah. It's all about, you know, I really do believe, you know, you get to that point where when giving back actually feels just as good as achieving yourself. And I just kind of scratched that part of my life, you know.
It's a nice position to be in. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's to be honest, it's still, I still kind of like, you know, like, whoa, this is me. Yes. You know, just keep in mind, you know, a lot of stuff we didn't talk about my childhood. I mean, we're talking about, I mean, total transparency here. I had such whopping learning disabilities. Christ, I went to college. I couldn't fucking read, you know? I mean, I went and bought the books, and I was like, I opened up a book and I was like, you know, I'm reading I bought all the books. I picked the thinnest one out of the stack, open it up, start reading this thing. And I'm like, okay, read that page again. I was okay. You know nothing that you just read. You're going to have to find a better way. So I basically went to the professors and I said, okay, what percentage of the class of the grade is in the books? And they would all give me a percentage. So some of them said, well, the lectures are 75%. Well, good. I get to go to class, stay awake, take notes, and I'm good.
Yeah.
If the class had 40% of the reading, I had to find somebody to help me get the information out of the book, you know? So, you know, the challenges that I went through, which were my blessings, the challenges that I had early in life is really what made me who I am. But I guess now is where I start to look back, oh God, the fat little boy who could barely read, this is where you are now.
But no, things like that are inspiring to people. So it's always nice for people to see that anyone can achieve these goals if they put the work in.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And that's the thing, is that, you know, your shortcomings are really your biggest blessings, because what basically my shortcomings, they made me a problem solver. Is that, okay, I know that I can't solve the problem the way normal people do it. So I have to find my own way. And that phrase right there, I have to find my own way, is really what allowed me to, you know, kind of tell the story I did about what I've done.
Thinking through what you've been through and how you've had to grow physically and mentally, do you ever get pissed off when you see people that have all the potential, but they just sit there whinging about why they can't do something?
You know, brother, that's actually, it's funny you say that, because when I was young, I looked at those people and I was pissed. But as I got older, I realized that the fact that they had that talent and they didn't learn how to work hard, that was what gave me the opening. And so to a certain extent, I look at it and I kind of thank them, because if they worked like I did, I wouldn't have got it. I wouldn't have been able to do anything that I did, you know. And I really, when it comes down to it, I really try to be positive in regards that, hey, yes, you can sit down and you can cry a river, but the bottom line is there's a silver lining in everything that comes your way. No matter how bad it is, it's there for a reason. You just got to find out why it got put in front of you. And so, you know, when you have the guy who had all the talent and he couldn't actually realize his talents because he didn't do XYZ. Well, I was the guy doing XYZ when nobody could see. So I just kind of thanked him. Yeah, just, you know, keep, you know, stay over there and do nothing, because I get to slowly, little by little, I'm closing the gap here. So I've always been more kind of thankful from that perspective. Now, do I sometimes wonder what it had been like if I'd actually had some talent to start? Oh yeah. But, you know, bottom line is you don't get anywhere wondering what would have been. I only look back if I'm fucked up and I'm trying to figure out what not to do again.
Sure.
I'm always looking forward. Forward is the best. If I'm reflecting, it's because I'm trying to figure out where I went wrong so I don't repeat that mistake. Yeah. And the bottom line is, if you're looking at somebody else and you're thinking XYZ, that's time that you could have been focused on yourself and your betterment and your success. And so that's kind of always where I've been. You know, it's, you said it earlier, there's a lot of selfishness that goes into this. Yeah. And I think my selfishness was developed just trying to keep my head above water.
Oh, brilliant. John, it's been amazing chatting to you. I could sit here and chat all night, but you've got a busy schedule. Everyone, make sure you go and follow John on Instagram. He's got some motivational videos on there. They are pretty much wrestling-esque, but I love watching them. They always give me a kick up the backside when I watch them in the morning, just to get focused with everything. But it's been a pleasure. Just what is your Instagram handle again?
So it's at the John Andersen, but keep in mind my name is spelled different. So it's Jon. And then my last name is Andersen. That's Nordic. So I'm actually tied into the the Vikings, if you will. Although, you know, as a little guy, I would have never known that. So at the John Andersen.
We will make sure we get a link in the description below. John, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this chat with John Andersen, absolute legend in the sport, strongman, pro wrestling, gym strength, diets, and obviously an amazing bodybuilder as well. Thank you so much, my friend. While you're here, guys, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my awesome strength content.